As Dave said, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. As you know, I'm Jeff Kiplinger. Dave Kwajewski's here with me. We founded Selling Science as a sales and business development consulting group with life sciences companies.
My phone bouncing.
Today, we're talking about a small piece of what we do that can have a big impact. We're talking about life science trade shows and how most companies miss the opportunities to maximize their return on investment here.
Sorry.
John, can you mute? Sorry.
It's funny, within our technical space, it's really rare for the leader of a company to admit any issues with the science that's associated with their offering, but they're all quick to acknowledge that they have a sales problem. In most cases, a big part of the problem is minimal lead flow. And trade shows are a great place to start. They're concentrated, high energy opportunities to fill a pipeline, and most of us don't execute them very well. So today, the subject is upping your trade show game. We've identified 5 areas where some improvement can have a big impact. The majority of companies that we talk to are missing opportunities at trade shows. Now, this happens in every industry, but I think particularly in our technical one, it's kind of ironic. The majority of our sales staff are scientists, not professional salespeople. And we always bring the technical team to the trade shows because we feel that somebody who's just a pure salesperson is not technical enough. So what does this result in? A lot of highly technical conversations at trade shows and a lead list full of hope instead of clear next steps in line with our selling process. Now, the funny thing about trade shows is that a failure often looks like success. You collect a lot of cards or badge scans. You come home thinking that was great. There are a bunch of random business cards hiding the fact that you didn't get a single useful lead out of the whole enterprise. We've identified these 5 common fails, and I'm going to give out to people who attend a worksheet that they can use to jot down notes if any of the specifics that we mentioned resonate with you. I'm going to send around the slides at the end of this, so don't feel like you have to capture all the content or sit there and write a lot of notes. But at this point, I want to turn this over to Dave to guide you through the way that we're addressing these hidden fails.
Thanks, Jeff. The problem, simply stated, is that we just don't act in line with our stated goals for a trade show. We don't prepare to achieve what we want. We don't think about what's important to measure or even how to measure it. And in not doing any of that, it's almost impossible to achieve success. That's the problem. Most people who are going to trade shows don't know why they're showing up. So, what ultimately happens, they have nothing prepared in advance of the show. They don't know what to do when they get there. And at the end of the show and after the show, they're left chasing names on a spreadsheet from people who really don't want to hear from them. And, you go back and, ultimately management have to question the return on the investment and whether there was any value at all derived from it. And, should they go back? As salespeople, as marketers, we're always, advocating for going to as many events as we can that we think are going to add value. And management is always questioning that, and rightfully so. In the end, without preparation, execution, and results, everyone throws up their hands in disgust. So in today's workshop, we're not going to talk about how to choose that right trade show. We're going to assume some of those decisions have already been made, probably years in advance, and they're on your calendar. So, the travel is already probably booked, the payments and reservations are already made, you're going to a trade show. So what can you do now in the next 6 to 12 weeks to get the most value from that event? The slide has some of the more common goals we've heard of, and I've even used in justification of events in my past. Looking through this list, you can probably do any of these things as part of your goals for an event, but you can't do all of them. So as you and your team plan to go to this event, does everyone know why they're going? More than that, what are those goals specifically? Who's going to do what, and how do we achieve success, and ultimately, how do we measure that success? So there's a lot we can do before we ever show up on the exhibit floor. A productive pre-show sales plan, is going to go way beyond connecting with your college roommate in Chicago or figuring out who the Red Sox are playing this weekend. There's a lot of things that can be done prior to the event to impact our pipeline. Conference organizers have the obligation to tell us a lot of information that oftentimes companies just don't use, right? As part of their pre-show marketing, they're putting out a preliminary and final program. In that program are speakers, poster presenters, and exhibitors, and all of these people are committed to being there. A conference is a great place to meet people, to influence your book of business and build your pipeline, but it's also a great place to impact your career and the brand of your company. We work in specific scientific fields and niches within those fields, and trade shows are a great opportunity to improve our status amongst peers and customers, to go beyond just a transactional type relationship. But the thing is, those relationships have to be built from the ground up. So the recommendation: make some lists. The top 5 talks I need to attend, the top 5 exhibitors I need to meet, the top 5 posters I need to see, and to meet the academic groups that are in our relevant research space. The facts are that conversations are going to have a much greater impact when they occur outside the booth. These conversations at talks and posters occur where the presenter is most comfortable. Their sales guy wall isn't up. As soon as these people walk into the exhibit floor, as soon as they walk into the booth, they're guarded. They're not going to tell you the whole truth, and it's going to take a lot for you to build that rapport and trust to that point where they can do that. I argue that these walls are much lower, if not there at all, when you're just sitting next to them at a talk, outside the exhibit hall. The takeaway is take action. Control your results. Don't be passive. So obviously, as if we're attending a trade show, hopefully we've been vetted to be able to have a conversation. And having a conversation for most people isn't difficult. But are they the right conversations? Are they conversations that are going to lead to a clear future commitment? Do we even know? Does our booth personnel know what that clear future commitment even means? So put yourself in this scenario. Imagine for a moment you're standing on the booth and you're talking to somebody, you're in a good technical conversation, and in the corner of your eye, you notice that prospect you've been dying to talk to from that company that seems to be spending money with everybody is engaged in a conversation with one of your application scientists. How confident are you that application scientist is delivering a consistent message to what you would deliver? Do they know what the clear next step is, and are they closing for it? I guess ultimately, do you put your trust and faith in the hands of that person? If not, the responsibility really falls back on you as the sales leader. How well have you prepared your team? How well do they understand the goals and the messaging associated with the event? And are they ready to execute? Have they practiced? The most overlooked part of planning for a trade show is starting and holding these conversations for people who aren't professional salespeople, which most people in our space are not. So whether the booth tees up these conversations or not is mostly out of our control. Hopefully over time we can grow to the fact that we're working in unison with marketing. But again, 6 to 12 weeks out, the graphics are the graphics. The packages are probably already packed and ready to ship. So since we're talking about booth, just a quick rant on booth rules. I started out in sales when I was 22. My first sales boss was a disciplinarian who had established booth rules, and they were enforced. No food or drink in the booth other than water. Those water bottles better be out of sight. No open briefcases, no computers, no clutter, no chairs, period. Proper dress, shiny shoes. Are these the right rules? I don't know. They were in his mind, and that's all that really mattered. We knew what they were, and we executed in accordance with them. Well, most of us. I've run trade show booths as a sales leader, and I have my own set of rules. They're more flexible than what I was trained in, but people knew what they were, and they respected them. In my opinion, the most important rule that I see broken time and time again is using your booth as a clubhouse for everyone you brought to the event. If you're bringing a big team and only have a 10 by 10 booth, make a schedule. Have people whose job it is to work the peripheral of the booth. So if you do get a rush and everyone is occupied in a conversation, these people can come in and make sure no lead goes uncaptured. Ultimately, remember why you're there: to advance the position of your business, to accomplish your goals. Anything you do to compromise that should be strictly forbidden. So after hours, are you one of those people whose day ends when the exhibit floor closes? Well, good news, you're in the majority. If you're not, even better news, because while your competition's off having team meetings or updating their CRM, you have a priceless opportunity to engage with attendees of the meeting outside of the exhibit hall. One of the highest impact activities is networking. And a lot of that, while some are cocktail hours. Not all are, but there's ample opportunities for people to engage with prospects throughout the majority of the trade show, not just the exhibit hours. There's topic specific industry groups that meet in the evenings. If those are of interest to you and they're relevant to your space, then make contact with the organizers and board of directors in advance. Most of the time that information is public. Academic groups have, what used to be alumni specific events have turned into alumni and friends of the program events. So figure out what alumni groups are most relevant to your service or product, and get connected with them and show up to these events and make a positive impact. Don't just go there to take, look to give. There's a lot of grad students there and postdocs who really could use your advice as a professional, and take the opportunity to do that. Suppliers, sponsors, exhibitors, we know always throw big parties associated with a lot of these events. Don't be that sales guy that crashes everyone's event and doesn't deliver any value. Reach out to these companies beforehand, especially the ones you're trying to get in with. Figure out what they're doing. Figure out how you can help, improve their guest list, and go out of your way to invite people. And, if you do invite people and they show up, ask them to go out of their way to let the organizers know that you're the reason they're there. There's a lot of activities that go beyond happy hour or dinner with colleagues. Just take advantage of those and you'll get more out of your trade show, bottom line.
So I want to take over for a minute here and kind of describe the way this workshop will actually work. As you know, we help companies build better sales programs. Over and over, we found that planning and executing a trade show has a really high impact on the BD team. And one of the reasons for this is that most companies do it poorly. We all have to do these shows in order to expose ourselves and our brand, but most of us get a poor return from that. Turns out that, across all industries, only 26% of companies do any specific trade show training for their sales teams. Many think of trade shows as just a necessary extension of marketing, something where they're obligated to do it to get the company logo out there, because sales don't usually close at shows. And many focus, therefore, on the wrong metrics, such as counting all the business cards or the badge scans. Trade shows are really invaluable, though, for your sales team. If you do them well and other people do them poorly, you automatically gain a competitive edge. Your team gets a chance to hone their skills, something that's particularly important if you're moving scientists from the bench into more customer-facing roles. Their personal and professional skills at rapidly establishing rapport and pre-qualifying the person they're talking to, those are important. And at a trade show, the main purpose is to meet new people. Even if you bring along, someone like your CEO or an account manager to meet with people in your key accounts, you've still got to staff your booth with people that are focused on meeting people that are walking by, the new leads, because that's where your future business is going to come from, your future growth. Pre-qualifying is relatively easy at a trade show because it's like speed dating, right? Everybody's there playing the same game. They're under the same rule book. They're there to have short conversations to figure out whether there's more reason to talk. So your conversations with anyone who really has an interest are committed conversations. You're not interrupting somebody with a cold call. You're doing what you came there for. And if you set the right metrics and you train your staff correctly, sales management can be really a breeze. The event itself is over in 3 days, and you can measure your success against those correct metrics right away. Now, our workshop is called Killer Trade Shows. It covers everything that we've been talking about here and more. If you add this to your program, ideally 6 to 12 weeks before the next important show, you should see some return very, very quickly. But let's talk a little bit before we get into the mechanics of the workshop about measuring that return. Most companies we speak with simply don't. We see a lot of companies using trade shows to meet with their existing accounts, and this is great. It certainly saves you a flight to each customer site to maintain a human connection. But it should be the focus of an account manager or a senior exec, not the sales team. For growing companies, you need more new customers. Your existing accounts, the ones that you serve well now and the ones that you serve well out of your new business, will come back to you whether you take them to a dinner at the show or not. Your new sales reps should be at the show because they need leads to work on to build out their own book of business. Everything about a trade show is designed to help you meet new people that might become customers. So you have to ask, like we've been asking, are their goals clear? Are you set up to measure the pertinent results? If the account manager is there to meet with the existing accounts, the metric for the people in the booth is going to be different from those working to extend versus find critical new business. So measure leads against whatever your clear definition is. If it's not a lead, if you just get cards dropped off in a fishbowl for your raffle of a bottle of bourbon. It's a lead if your sales rep arranges a follow-up call to talk about a qualified opportunity. So this is how the workshop works, nuts and bolts. I don't want to talk too much about this. It's all written down. The slide describes it, and you'll get the slide. What's important is that it's a half-day interactive team event that's going to result in not only concrete planning, everybody gets a workbook to map out their strategy for the trade show, script development, metrics, role-playing is an essential part of this. So your whole team is going to come out inspired to try some of their new tricks. We suggest involving even your admin people if they're directly involved in planning the show, your marketing people, same reason, sales team, of course, and the sales management critically. The learning format is appropriate for adult learning. We understand that learning and retaining requires an engaging approach. Some people ask us to do this by Zoom, and if we do, we like to break it into two-hour sessions to avoid Zoom fatigue, but it is much more effective delivered live, and that yields a team-building experience as well as some new skills. So Dave, you want to kind of wrap this up in the last three slides?
Absolutely. So after watching, coming out of COVID, all of a sudden people started showing up to meetings again. And, we watched our clients struggle at these trade shows, despite the fact that attendance wasn't poor. It was actually going up quite rapidly. So we developed this workshop and piloted it with a couple of our clients leading into AAPS last year, and their testimonials are on the screen. In general, they saw an increase in performance, and they were able to track that performance directly to an increase in their pipeline. And ultimately, over time, obviously our sales cycles aren't immediate, but over time they're expecting, great increases in their revenue because of the initiatives they took. So selling science is a full consultancy, a sales consultancy focused on life science. That's where our love and experience lie. We wake up and do this every day because, we never want to see, a lack of commercial presence or a lack of commercial program hold back an advancement that could progress science and ultimately save lives. I've joined companies that technology had gone stagnant, and through just a concerted commercial effort, we saw those technologies reemerge and become platform technologies within the industry. And that ultimately has improved the drug development process. And, that's a huge boon for me. I hang my hat on that one. And, if we can do the same for you, it'd be an absolute pleasure. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to you. Before we get into specific questions, I guess one thing that I'd like to throw out is, we hopefully delivered some value today. Hopefully, whether you work with us on this workshop or not, you can go to your next trade show a little bit better prepared with some, some ideas that you can bring back in-house and execute more effectively. If you'd like to engage with us in the workshop, just simply drop a Y in the chat or, contact Jeff or I directly. With that, I'll turn it over to the audience for questions.